From one of Australia's former leading homicide detectives, this is I Catch Killers with Gary Jubelin.
One of the prison guards said to you when you were leaving prison, "There were times where I thought you would be shipped home in a body bag, especially after the beating you took. But you showed us all, not just strength and resilience, but you have such a kind heart. Take a look around you. You made a difference here. Not everyone does that. Be proud of leaving this place. You have no one to thank but yourself."
Yeah. It was the last thing I expected leaving. To, I guess, have one of the people, acknowledge that even being in those situations, that I tried.
I Catch Killers with Gary Jubelin.
Welcome back to part 2 of my chat with Cassie Sainsbury. You might know her as Cocaine Cassie. Cassie spent 3 years in what I would describe as a living hell after being caught trafficking cocaine out of Bogota Airport in Colombia. I want to say up front, I'm sorry I'm making you relive these things, but I think that people, when they do hear your story, will get a better understanding of who you are, what you went through, and might, in a strange, bizarre sort of way, find inspiration. Because I find it fascinating, human spirit, how you can, some of those situations that you found yourself in prison, I don't know how you got up the next day, or I'm sure, there were times when you didn't think you would survive. So I apologise up front, dragging you back through it. So
That's okay. It's fine.
okay. I want to talk about, we left in part 1 talking about the detention centre, which I'm still scratching my head how a blonde female ends up in a South American detention centre full of males. You survived that, but that was only the start of your let's call it your journey, because then you ended up in prison. Tell us about your first impressions of prison, then we'll talk about life in prison. So I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so I was taken to El Buen Pastor roughly 6 o'clock in the morning on a Monday. And when we're pulling up, all I can see is these massive blue doors. And I couldn't see anything really far beyond that at that point. And I was like, oh, okay. This is not what I expected. Not that I knew what I was expecting, but it wasn't what I expected. And obviously, again, the police went through the remaining stuff that I had and further took out more stuff just because they could. There was actually no real reason for them to keep doing it. And when I was taken to enter through the blue door, there was a small little blue door on the side, and I basically got pushed through it, and I fell on the floor, and I look up, and I looked to my left, and there was these buildings with clothes all hanging out the sides of them, like thousands of pieces of clothing. And I just remember it was a very peculiar thing to see. And I was like, well, why are all these clothes out there? And it just came across as very dirty, very dirty. Instantly, I had a guard who just did not like me at all, pushed me around, was very, very harsh physically with me, considering it's not that I could really run anywhere or do anything or even speak or back chat to her. She was actually very, very mean. I think that's the only word to put it. She was mean. And walking through, I saw all these guards, blue military type uniform, and then there was these other people walking around with these coffee color type uniforms. And I thought, oh, okay, who are those people? And it's really interesting, obviously looking back on it. When I walk in there, I'm not really processing anything that's going on. It's like watching something's happening to you, but you're not really a part of it. You're not there feeling like you're living that moment at all. Because it is. The moment you step through that blue door, your life stops. That's it. It pauses. And so when I get taken in to, obviously, when I was being processed, obviously, again, getting asked questions, if I had any tattoos, if I was married, had kids. This guard also that I had, she spoke very little English. She did try to speak to me, and she was trying to be a little bit warming, kind of be like, it's okay, it's fine, it's okay, everything will be okay. And in my head, I'm like, I'm in prison. How can it be okay? You live here. Like, why is this okay? Like, how can you say that to me right now? And but she was trying to do I guess, a nice thing, really. She could have treated me like absolute crap there, and she didn't. And so I was processed, and then I was put into this little room, and she's like, stinky, you stink. And in my head, I was like, well, what do you think? Do you really think I was going to strip down naked in front of a bunch of men and shower? Like, not that I had any
You'd
clothes.
come from your detention centre.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that I had any clothes to change into either, because I'd basically been left with nothing. And I knew I stank. Like, it'd been, 3 or 4 days, no shower. I can positively tell you that I think I held on to urine like 2 days at one point, and it actually physically hurt to
Not
sit
wanting
down.
to use the toilet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm put into this little, what is it called? Over there, it's called a howler. So it's like this little cagey room. And she goes, shower. And there was on the left hand side, there was a little shower in the open, and then a toilet in the open. And in my head, I was kind of like, well, this is my life now.
Yeah.
Going from being such an introvert, I don't like my body, I don't like showing off my body. One of those people that would wear oversized baggy stuff, and then basically having to be naked in front of everyone. So the showers over there are freezing cold ice water. And naturally, coming from Australia, we have a luxury of very nice water. So this was the first shower that I had to have with freezing cold water. And so obviously strip off, and I almost showered as if like I was a little cat, because I was like, put my foot in, and it burnt that it was so cold. And so I not even a minute, I don't think. I got water where I had to get water, and that was it. I was out. And the guard had left some clothes. Oh, I laugh at this now, but I wasn't in a good mood at the time. Had left some clothes on the sitting bench there for me to wear. Now I've picked it up, and it was like this size 4 top. Now I was quite big, so I would have been like a size 14, size 16. So I wouldn't even be able to. What? Like, it wasn't happening. So I had to put my dirty clothes back on. Back on. And so the guys come back in, and she looked really upset with me, and she's like, clean. And I was like, they don't fit me. Like, I'm not walking around in stuff that doesn't fit me. So, and she just avoided me after that, because I stank, and I really did stink.
Yeah.
And then bit by bit, more people were starting to be processed. And probably within about the hour or two, this room was full. And these women just kept looking at me. A couple tried to talk to me, but I couldn't really say anything. I was no Spanish. No Spanish. Yeah. Trying to be like smiling and not looking mean at anyone, because that also was... I have quite a expressional face. So if I don't like someone, it's noticeable straight away. So I was trying to be overcautious of not making the wrong face at anyone, not making eye contact, because we don't make eye contact in prison. All those sorts of things. And then still trying to be polite. And it was very...
Yeah, look, it's if it wasn't so heavy and so serious, it's almost like a comedy. Like I think what's that movie, Bridget Jones' Diary when she goes
Uh,
into the Thai prison or whatever, and just totally inappropriate and just not understanding it. It's
yeah.
and look, we're not laughing at it. We're not laughing at the situation, but sometimes you just got to go, what the hell?
Yeah. And I think now I can laugh at things
Yeah,
because it it was hell going through at that time. But now I kind of go, it's almost just so, it's a real twisted humor towards it
yeah,
because it's so funny that you just don't think it would happen. You go, "Pff, yeah, right. You're in those situations, you know, you won't find something funny and there are moments where you do laugh in prison. You do have okay days where you feel like a normal human being. And I think, yeah, I can look back at everything now and actually laugh at parts that probably were not that great at the time.
yeah,
But yeah, as I said, like it's really twisted humor because if I'm waiting to be actually introduced into the prison and then there's just really random things that happen and you go, really? Like,
can it get any worse? They've given me
yeah,
clothes and I can't fit into them.
yeah.
What was your impression of the other prisoners when you were taken in?
um,
Were they like you get all sorts in prisons, obviously, but
yeah,
you get the people that I the sense I get of a prison is that everyone's a potential threat, even if they're being nice to you, and it's hard to
yes.
sort of navigate your way through that
I
world.
think it's worse if they're nice to you, to be honest,
Yeah,
because you're always waiting for the other coin to flip.
yeah,
Um, I think the people that were actually walking in with me, that had been processed with me, they, it's going to sound very judgy, but almost poor. They
yeah,
looked poor. They looked like they'd just been pulled off the street for something. And it was really sad because, and I don't know how this started in such a time, like at the very beginning of my process going through it, I felt bad for these women. Lots of them were crying. I presumed most of them, obviously, their families over there, they're very tight knit families. They all have kids young. And I just looked at these women and I'm thinking, you poor people. Like I don't know what you did. And I'm not anyone to judge because I'm here too. But
yeah,
I just felt sad for these people because nobody wants to be there.
yeah,
Nobody wants to be there. Um, there was a couple of scary looking people, obviously. Um, some people that you just got this instant feeling that you have to be nice to them, but stay away from them
yeah,
type. Like if I'm not nice to you, it's gonna bite me in the bum a little bit later. So, and I in my head, prison was kind of like we're all in the same building and we just all have our own little cells. Kind of like what you see in the movies.
yeah.
Uh obviously because we
Sorry,
don't see.
I'm laughing now at you. Like it just seems too ridiculous. You're so naive when you've got in there. And
Yeah,
yep, okay, we can all get
exactly
on.
because
Yeah,
I I I'd only ever seen cell blocks obviously in movies or something.
yeah,
And in my head, that's what I was walking into. Didn't matter what country I was in, that was kind of what was waiting for me. Even though I'd just gone through a mini hell in a holding cell, but I kind of justified that by saying, but that's not a prison. That was
yeah,
just a holding cell. So when I'm actually, before going into prison, I am strip searched again by male guards. In particular, I got one who obviously, again, definitely went way past acceptable behavior.
yeah,
Uh, Manhandling, fondling, touching, feeling, being very almost dominating in the sense of, excuse the French, but, you're a piece of shit, kind
yeah,
of.
yeah,
That's, um, and I think in that moment, I've kind of gone, how many times do I have to keep going through this? And I think the frustrations kind of stuck in that moment as well, because I thought, well, how many times do I have to be searched? If each time I get searched, I've got nothing, why do you think it's going to change? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have any connections to get anything in here. I don't speak to anyone. And it was almost every time I got searched, it just escalated a little bit more and more.
Mm.
So got dressed, picked up like my three pieces of items that I was given by the guard, because she didn't take them away from me, maybe with the potential hope that I would squeeze myself into them one day. I was finally walked through into the prison. And it still wasn't what I expected. So in my head, obviously, I expected to see the prison block. That's what I expected. And I walked through this door, and first thing I see is this patch of grass on my left-hand side, doors all around me, and then this corridor. And I've gone, oh, okay. In the meantime, I can smell bread, like fresh bread. I was like, this is really weird. So we walk through, and then I see these same people with the coffee-colored uniforms walking around as well. And I'm still trying to figure out if they're guards, if they're volunteer workers, if they're inmates. And people still talking at me, and it was just way over my head. I'm just kind of looking at them and like, processing. Not happening.
You're not
understanding anything.
the language at all at this stage.
No.
Are you? Other
No.
than a couple of words, you had nothing.
Literally, I was at that point. I'd even completely blanked that yes is C, because if I was, my brain was under such duress that I wasn't even if I think I'd just been a little bit, I guess, understood a little bit of Spanish, I don't think I would have been able to, because it was just so much emotional stress that I just couldn't comprehend anything. And I think that's why I went in there so ditzy, kind of, okay, wound up in prison. This is what it is. So walking through the corridor, it's when I come into the prison, essentially, the actual where the yards start. So the yards there are broken up into what they call 9 patios. So when you first walk through the corridor, you've got patio 5, patio 4, patio 3, patio 2. Then in the middle, there is there's a building on your left. I'm just visualizing it.
Yeah.
Then just past that, there's like this stage. And I remember looking at it going, okay. Then there was this church. And I'm really confused at this point. I'm like, well, this is not what I expected. And then passing that, on my right-hand side, there is a park with a playground with kids on it, like little kids.
Yeah.
And first thought was, why are there little kids in prison? Like, what did they do something? Because this is not normal. This is not normal at all. And I knew later on I'd probably understand it, but at that point it was just mind blowing that there's a stage, there's a church, there's a playground, and I was mind blown. Definitely was not what I imagined. Then you walk a little further down this corridor, because it seems like a corridor that just keeps on giving. There's patio 9, patio 8 on the other side, and then right at the very end, there's patio 1.
Yep. Patio
1 is where all the newcomers go. It is the most... there's no construction to this patio at all. It is probably the oldest part of the prison. So they use old tin sheds as the actual cells, and you're just all locked up in there together. No mattresses, no nothing. You just left to basically sleep on the floor. So I get in there, And I see these phones on the wall. And I thought, oh, they've got phones here. How do the phones work? And again, as I said, I can laugh about it now, but at that time it was chaotic in my head because I wanted to understand everything that was being said, but I just wasn't comprehending anything. And then we're locked up in this tin shed, which is when I first come across lovely lady with some nasty cuts on her face, lots of scars. She had a metal bar through her leg. And I walk in and it was almost like this instant, she looked at me, I looked at her, and I looked straight at the ground because I knew, part of me knew, I knew she was going to be a nightmare for me.
Yeah.
And we were kept in there and they did a roll call, and probably about 30 minutes later we were released. And I've walked out into the little yard that they have within the patio. And an older lady comes up to me and goes, "Oh, you gringa." I say, "Yes, yes. Family. Familia, family." And I'm like, no, I got no money. And I remember speaking to her so quickly that we must have been like a mirror to each other when we were speaking, because she looked at me so confused. And so then, as much as I tried to speak slower, I wasn't actually speaking slower. I think I was getting more frustrated that she didn't understand me. So the lovely lady, she actually lent me a phone card. And she helped me call someone from my family. And so I decided to call my sister. Now, it would have been maybe 1 o'clock in the morning here in Australia. And call, and she's like, "Hello, hello." And then something was said in Spanish on the phone, and it blocked out what she was saying. And so I was like, I'm in prison. I need a lawyer. I'm going to die. These people are scary. And then it was gone. The phone call was over.
Is that the first communication you had with
Yes,
your
it was.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And so that little Spanish voice was saying that there was 30 seconds of the call.
Right. Okay.
So over there, communication nearly didn't exist for me because the phone cards, because it was so expensive to call Australia, 5,000 peso, which was the most you could get on a phone card, would last me like a minute.
Okay.
And obviously I didn't have disposable money to keep buying phone cards. So that was the first time I spoke to someone since being obviously processed and entered in prison. Actually, it was the first time I'd managed to speak to my family since being charged.
Okay.
So
well, that would have been a traumatic call for you and
she
to receive.
She still brings it up to today. Like, that's the only thing you could have said, that you're gonna die. And I was like, give me a break. Like, honestly, I just come face to face with probably one of the scariest people I could see on my first day.
How'd that play out with Mrs. Slit Cheeks? Was there conflict there? Did you avoid conflict?
I avoided her as much as I could, but constantly finding myself in front of her. And we did have a lot of conflict. So she was actually a gang leader of a group of women in there who, when you're there on your first night, they go through your stuff and they steal what they want.
Yeah.
And I was sexually assaulted by one of her gangs that first night. And it kind of set the pace for me there, because I just remember going, how can women do this to other women? How is that? I think you expect it sounds really bad. You expect it from a man, but I didn't expect it from a woman. And so to go through that on my first night in there, I went into a very dark place, and I couldn't tell anyone because I couldn't be a snitch. So
Yeah.
I know people were aware of what happened to me that night, but nobody acknowledged it.
Yeah.
And the next morning, obviously, because they beat the living crap out of me. So I was covered in bruises. I couldn't walk properly, and people were like, "Oh, you good?"
Mm.
What was I gonna say? Like I would
Well,
have made an instant enemy, more of an enemy that I already had. So I just
and it wasn't in you, and I think you made a conscious decision. You weren't going to fight. You weren't a fighter. You weren't going to
no,
fight. You just had to manage it the way you could. You had enough sense to realise that you couldn't report it. If you're reporting it to people, you would have been known as a snitch, and it would have been 10 times worse. So
yeah, yeah, no,
not a good position to be in.
no, and I think one thing that I really wanted to set up and keep true to myself was I didn't want prison to change me.
Yeah.
I refused to let the environment make me become a nasty, vindictive, cold person. Because within those places, you do come across some of the nicest people you could ever imagine.
Yeah.
So, right. Couldn't obviously snitch on anyone. Everyone knew that I'd been sexually assaulted that night. I was then taken to go and speak to the prison director, who later decided to move me from patio 1 to patio 5,
Yep.
which was where technically all the foreigners were. Now, foreigners there means like Mexicans or Spanish, Peru, you know, Latin.
Not the blonde-haired
Yeah,
Aussie from South Australia. Yeah.
no. And I get in there and they're like, "Oh, there's another Australian here." And I was like, "What? Where?" And they're like, "Oh no, she was released." And I was
Right.
like, are we sure she was Australian? Still don't know till this day. But
Yeah.
um and then so there was a lady. She was an English teacher in prison, and she was a bit of a translator for me, which was my first grasp at actually being able to communicate. And it was really refreshing, but I still didn't know who I could trust. So at that point, I just became a very quiet person. I didn't want to speak to anyone. I didn't want anyone knowing why I was there, who put me there, anything. I get into patio 5, finally get a mattress. And it's like this little paper thin foam type mattress. And I walk in, and obviously because I was already injured, all these people swarm down and they just pick up the mattress, pick up my little baggie, and they're gone. They took my stuff. And I remember just going, I just got robbed again. And
Yeah.
and when you walk into patio 5, there's this huge white gate here, and then there's stairs, and it's 4 flights of stairs. And I just remember standing there, and I must have had the most dumbfounded look on my face and going, did anyone else see that? Like, is this normal? And then I finally get up to where my cell was, and my stuff was there. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, maybe things, a little bit
It went
nicer
right.
in this. Yeah. And then I was very fortunate. My first cellmate, she was absolutely lovely. She gave me some clothes, as she told me that I really stank.
Maybe she
Everyone
did it
kept
for her own benefit. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think so as well. And it was she made a point of, giving me deodorant and soap, and it was just, yeah, very surreal to now look back. And but it was that kindness there in that precise moment that I was like, oh, not everyone's bad. Not
I,
everyone
I
in this place is bad.
I got the sense reading the book, and there were some horrible situations that you found yourself in with the bashings, and if anyone gets the book, the picture of the bruises on your stomach and all that'll give you the sense of the state of the bashings. But those little acts of humanity sort of think, okay, there is something worth living for. There is some beauty in this this horrible world. But look, we've talked about some of the hard times. I just want to get this out on a quote from your book, because you found a nice cellmate there, but it was just a journey for you the whole time, because you got moved around and different cellmates and different ones. But this is a quote from your book. You're stabbed by your crazy cellmate Jara. So
Yeah.
Jara's attack was relentless, fueled by a fury that seemed to transcend reason. The blade danced perilously close. Fear and adrenaline intermingled in me. The metallic tang of blood lingered in the air. I felt the sudden surge of pain each time the needle was pushed into my abdomen, legs and arms. I couldn't stop her. She was crazy and I had no strength. I was certain that was the end. Your words, your book, that's a pretty heavy situation. And just to put it in context before you talk about it, was like a knitting needle that was filed down and serrated edge, and that was your cellmate that you knew something was brewing because she was just crazy. Talk us through that situation.
So as some of the guards might have said, I think I saw more of that prison than the common inmate. I was moved around a lot for my own security. I was put into a high security patio where technically I was supposed to live on my own. I received a cellmate who at the beginning seemed okay. She seemed like she was a bit of a hypocrite. She did give off that type of energy, but at the same time, I'm in prison. I can't judge anyone either. We instantly didn't get along, and the more I got to see the type of person she was, the worse it got. And at this point, I was starting to stand up for myself. So starting to not be such a pushover anymore. Not that I could speak great Spanish, but I was being able to defend myself. So this lady in particular, she was the right-hand man to one of the current worst cartels in Colombia. My potluck.
That's a good one to take on. Well done.
And as soon as she realized that a lot of people in that patio, because we were a small group of people, they actually liked me, that they thought nice things of me, that I wasn't a bad person. And they looked after me as much as they could. And so this lady didn't like it. She liked being the center of attention. And we started getting into a lot of arguments. And she started turning everyone against me. And I remember we had a fight. I think it was probably one of the first physical fights. And the person who lived next to me in the other cell, she came in and stopped what was going on. And then later that night, which was when she attacked me. So she knitted. She knitted. And she attacked me with a knitting needle. And I knew something was coming that night, because she just a few hours beforehand, she just was out of character. She wasn't acting like she normally did. You know, she pretended to go to sleep early. And it was just lots of little things. And I remember the first initial feeling of that metal going through my stomach, and the shock of it. And the first thought, not because that first stab wound is what really caught me, and it was the main trigger pain that I was feeling, not the others she was doing. It was, she's going to kill me here. And no guards will step into something like that and really stop it. So I knew that I just wasn't going to get through that. And if I did, it would have been a miracle, because the amount of time she stabbed me, it it was there was a lot of blood, the smell of blood, and I started losing consciousness. And she was screaming towards the end. She was absolutely crazy. And I do remember the guards eventually coming in and obviously then being taken out into medical, and obviously getting, because they don't do stitching, they don't do anything, that little bits of glue put into all of these little stab wounds. And it was just, nothing happened to her. They didn't do anything to her. It was just, it happened, and now you live with it. And then I had to go back and still live with her. Kind of like, well, round two? Like,
What?
let me do this again?
I-
Like, it was just, it was so, there was no order or anything in that prison at all. It was basically the inmates were to themselves, the guards to themselves. And she was just a psycho. And she threatened me that I was going to be killed. I was going to be knocked off when I got out, that she was going to, have my prison sentence stretched out longer. She threatened me with so much. And the problem was that because of her position in such a, what is it called? It's called the Clan de Golf, the cartel. And she just really got that into me. And so again, felt terrified that the day that I am released, if I didn't have to worry about other people, do I now have to worry about this as well? All because she just didn't like me.
You got
So
navigating your way through that. The way you tell it and you relive it, and you're basically talking about someone trying to stab you to death, and then you've got to be put back in the same room. And anyway, I'm glad you two have sorted out your differences. Now go to sleep. Don't worry
yeah,
about it. Like it's madness, but when you talk about it out here, it sounds like insanity that an environment can operate that way. But that was your world. But one thing that, when I say one thing, a lot of things shocked me in your book. But as a result of a punishment where, and this is my take on it, they couldn't, officers or the people supposed to be looking after you, couldn't Marcabe, not sure if that's the right word, nasty way of torturing you by taking you, just grabbing you, taking you to place to see the dentist, even though you didn't have problems with your teeth, hold you down in a dentist's chair, and then have this psychopath dentist just drilling your teeth as punishment. And what are you going to complain? That you got held down and had your teeth drilled. Do you want to? I can see the look on your face, and I'm sorry I'm bringing this up. Now you're smiling. I think you smile when you get nervous sometimes. But tell us about that, because that was horrendous. What happened there?
so it was a bit of a aftermath of that exact fight. Not even fight, because it was one-sided, where my inmate did stab me. So it was basically a few days after that. And from what I understood, she actually arranged for it to somewhat be done. So I was taken to Sanidad, which is where they have their dentist, and get in there, and I see, obviously it's a dentist, and I thought, well, okay. First initial thought was, I'm gonna go check up, done. Because I didn't think things like this could actually happen until obviously I'm put in the chair and they start looking at my teeth, and then obviously looking back at my back teeth, and all of a sudden I feel the guard's hands grip down my arms on the side, and chair goes back, and this dentist, she just starts drilling into my back tooth, and the pain, oh, that nerve pain, it shot through my whole body. And I wasn't too bad with dentists before then. To live through that agonizing pain, and it was about 5 minutes, but I can tell you, it felt like an entire lifetime of being drilled at this one tooth. And then when it was over, that was it. And they left it exposed.
Ouch.
They left it exposed for about 3 weeks. So it was this constant feeling there. But the thing is, when they did fill it in, they didn't do it properly either. So over the years, obviously, I think probably about 2 years ago, part of the filling actually came out. And till today, it still hasn't been fixed because I am so terrified to go into a dentist and have anything done. I have to get my wisdom teeth out, and I went and got an x-ray, and they actually started, playing around and touching with the utensils, and I was like, don't you dare touch that side of my face. And they're like, oh, it's okay. I'm like, don't touch it. Don't touch it. If you want to touch something in here, knock me out. Like, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't go through that again. And that is probably, of all things, it is a trauma that will stay with me more than anything for the rest of my life, and something that's so necessary
Yeah.
to obviously have in everyday life, because it's not every day I'm going to walk back into a prison and be in front of that trauma. This is something so simple.
But it was their way of showing that they've got control of you, and there's consequences, and there's not a thing you can do about it. But what a brutal way to be shown that. Well, one adventure after another. You also had to deal with a lot of media attention too, which that would have been hard. Like 60 Minutes are interviewing you over there before you're even been sentenced at court, and you had, I think, one of the person that you considered a friend had taken a photo and sold it to the media, and then you became a hot ticket item in the jail that people get photos that sell it to the media. All of which would have made you stand out, and that's the last thing you want to do in a prison, I would imagine. What was your take on the media, and did you realise the extent of the media interest back here in Australia, or worldwide for that matter?
I do remember one of the first things I said to my family when I was arrested, and that was, I don't want it in the media. That was the very first thing I said, because if I ever had a chance of coming home and trying to move forward, whether it been 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, I couldn't have that all bearing down and I guess having that burden on my shoulders for the rest of my life. But obviously, being in prison, one doesn't get a say in much as far as what other people do. I was completely exposed to the media. I'm not a fan of the media. And I think it would have shown in probably my first court hearing, where I walk into this courtroom and I look angry. Because I walk in and this whole courtroom is full of media.
Yeah.
And all I've gone, I'm like, this is it. Like, this is my life. Whether I survive this prison, whether I don't, this is what I will be remembered for. And not coming out and speaking about what happened and what I went through, it'll just be trafficked 5.8 kilos of cocaine. That's it. So media has been quite harsh in the sense of, it doesn't matter, even if I have tried to tell all stuff, it's never been tell all. It's always been, let's dramatize it, let's keep that out, and let's change that, and let's do this. So it hasn't really mattered what I've tried to do. This kind of way is the only way to actually get it out there, where you can have a conversation with me. It's not, I guess, under pressure, because nobody, unless you have been on the other side of an interview, it is horrible. It is so horrible. And obviously with the 60 Minutes, I got crucified for absolutely anything. If I moved my hands, if I got red on my chest, if I touched my face, it was behavioral instincts for lying. It was this, it was that. So it was just horrible. Even till today, I think most people find that I am very quiet on social media.
Yep.
I don't post my life on there. I might post bits and pieces. I have a very private, quiet life because I don't, unless I'm trying to do something good with what's happened to me, I won't come out. I won't milk the situation at all. Although people obviously believe, that I get rich off of doing things and this and that, but I don't. And the real reason why I stopped, I stepped out into the spotlight again, especially with this book, because I do believe that it can be of use and a reminder to some people that you can go through hell. You can go to hell and back, but it doesn't mean you have to give up. It doesn't mean that's who you are. That on the other side of all these misfortunes, life can be nice. You can try again. There's no limit on how many times you can try to get it right as long as you keep trying.
Yeah. Well, I think it comes across, and just on the issue with the media, someone like you would be so easy to misrepresent. We could take snippets from here, and the prison was a walk in the park. You smile, you laugh, and that's your
Yeah.
personality. That's and full credit to you. You made a conscious decision to keep your humanity in prison. Like you could have turned into this nasty, evil human being. And it would have been justified because that's a way that you got to survive in prison. But you've chosen, you can smile about talking about the most horrendous things, and media can take advantage of that. But I suppose on the back of Chappelle Corby, who followed, but prior to that, there was this interest, and Cocaine Cassie, the name stuck, and people just tried to get that story out. I was just looking at it from the media point of view. Some of the things that were reported. I'm now working in the media, but I a little bit disappointed in that there was a person. I saw you as very vulnerable at that stage as a 22-year-old in a South American prison, and we can all judge, but who are you to judge on other people's actions when you're caught up in an environment like that? So I think it was unfair. And I'll
I
say that might put people's noses out of joint, but I think it's unfair to exploit you in such a vulnerable situation.
I think that interview in particular, especially with that person, and obviously I hadn't just, it really marked the media for me because obviously the first one, as I go into detail in the book, I wasn't technically supposed to be speaking about my case until I was either sentenced or anything. I was told not to. And then, all the pressure behind the scenes with everything that was actually happening in prison. And it's nasty, vindictive, evil person from the second he could.
Yeah, to trip someone up in that environment, it's not hard to do. You're vulnerable. You're out of your depth in so many different ways, and certainly in the media. But it's another thing that you had to carry the burden of. You got sentenced. Can you just explain the sentence with the?
Okay.
You got sentenced to 6 years. You had to do parole, and then you after 3 years you were released. Is that
Yeah.
my understanding, or those rough figures?
So I was sentenced to 6 years, 72 months. I Over in Colombia, there exist certain benefits for each stage of your sentence. I couldn't do 72-hour release or home detention because of the severity of my charges, because technically they were considered aggravated. They were aggravated charges. So the only thing that I could potentially get was something called libertad condicional, which is basically parole. So once you have completed 3/5 of your sentence, which for me was, if I remember correctly, it was like 39 and a half months. So it was just over it was 43 and a half months. So just over 3 years. I did physically 2 years 11 months and 21 days in prison. I'd completed, I think, roughly 6 months worth of discount through teaching and everything else that I did, which meant I was above the scale to be released on parole. And unfortunately, it actually happened around the same time that COVID hit Colombia.
Great time to get out of
So
prison.
I just got in to get released on, obviously, because I'd done my time, not because I was released because of COVID. And then I was released not even the day before. I was released 30 minutes before Colombia went into lockdown. So I was released at 11:30 at night, and it went from being confined in a building, in a prison, to being confined in a room in an apartment building. So although free, I didn't feel free. And I'd had this whole, when I get out, I'm going to get a job, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And I couldn't. So this whole mind set up, this structure that I'd put in place, I couldn't do. And it was really hard to, actually deal with COVID over there, because I couldn't get any medical, I couldn't do a lot of stuff. And I shouldn't complain, because anything was better than being in that prison.
Mm.
But I still felt like, in a certain way, I was still in a prison, because I had to stay in Colombia for another 27 months until I had completed the full physical term of my sentence, which meant every month I had to report myself to immigration. And I laugh because when COVID was in Colombia, I couldn't report myself to immigration because they were shut. So I was technically undocumented for nearly 7 months in Colombia. Couldn't get sent money. I couldn't get money out of a bank. I couldn't do anything.
There's another podcast in the story of there, how you survived there, because it's not like you had known your way around Colombia before you got locked up. You'd only been there for 8 or 9 days or whatever
Yeah.
it was. So you were completely foreign. One thing, and I want to talk about the release from prison, but what we haven't touched on is that the work that you did in prison, and that you alluded to it there with your discounts, because you were teaching English, and that was something that you were really passionate about in prison, and something that you were helping people in a lot of ways.
Yeah. So I, as soon as I could actually, I guess, speak and understand Spanish, the whole structure of prison life changed. So I went from being this enemy to all of my inmates to suddenly being this person of interest, because they could suddenly talk to me. I wasn't just, this person that was ignorant, didn't want to learn the language, didn't want to fit in. So as soon as I started teaching English, it was scary. I'd never taught my own language to anyone before. And to go back and actually have to learn things about my own language, it was bizarre, because, we might say something in a certain way because we say it that way. So to actually find why. And I was very fortunate that teaching English to my inmates, it was really fulfilling to watch them want to learn this life skill, a language, because when they got out, they knew that this whole different set of opportunities would wait for them, because English over there is such a huge tool as far as getting ahead in life. And I would go above and beyond with all of my inmates to try and make sure that they were constantly advancing, understanding, to the point where I actually managed to get an outside English college to actually basically team up, give me all the materials, give them certificates that reflected as if they were outside experience with speaking English, to get a job. And this particular college was also working towards getting a call center set up for these ex-inmates as well. So there was this huge project that I was involved in. And in those moments of teaching, I suddenly was one of the inmates, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. I was one of them because they respected me. There's always this mutual respect between inmates because you don't know what they're capable of. And to be their teacher, not misuse, I guess, the authority that I have as a
Yeah.
teacher with them and still treat them as if we're an equal. I was helping them with, funny enough, with their legal documents, writing. I can write anything in Spanish perfectly. I know I know a lot of laws in Colombia. Studied a lot over there. Studied nursing. Studied criminology. Studied lots of things, and it was really interesting to obviously be the person that they all turned to when they needed help.
Yeah.
And I think I still remember this day, this inmate that was really, really good with me. She was almost like a mum to me. She was a very motherly figure. I was crying one day in patio 7. I hadn't been sentenced yet. And she wasn't meaning to be giving me tough love, but it was tough love because she spoke really broken English, by the way, to kind of give you a visual on this. She goes, "Stop crying." And when someone tells you to stop crying, you naturally cry more. And she goes, "But you're okay. You're healthy. You're fine. You don't have kids."
Yeah.
And she left it at that. And you kind of learn not to ask people why they're there. You wait for them to tell you. It's not something you try to get out of them. And I sat there quiet because it was true. I didn't have kids. And she goes, "Me and my husband are in prison. My kids are out there alone."
Yeah.
I'm going to get emotional. And it was just sometimes we're so absorbed in our own problems that we don't stop and think how bad it is for someone else. And that moment for me was very triggering because it was a focus point for me to go, what I'm going through is horrible. It sucks. My life is literally the definition of hell at the moment. But it could be worse. It could be so much worse. And she made me understand that. And so from that moment, from so early on in my time in prison, I was going through such hard things, but I still went and said, somebody else has got it worse than me. Somebody else will always have it worse than what I've got. And I think the strength that I actually have within me to keep pushing through and keep going, okay, I've got to pick myself up. I can do this. I can do better. I run towards challenges, knowing that I will very well fall flat on my ass because unless I'm being challenged now, I know that I'm not really learning more about myself, because unless we are pushed to our limit, we don't grow. We don't learn to self-reflect or anything really. So yeah.
Wow. Look, what you've said and what she said, such a simple thing, but so profound and obviously had an impact on you. But you talk about growing, and I'm looking at you, the person I imagine you to be at the time you went into prison to the person you are now, and there's been a hell of a lot of growth. I can see you're upset. Not sure if this will make you sadder or put a smile on your face, but I think it's worth reading out, because this is something that one of the prison guards said to you when you were leaving prison. And I've just made a note here. I think it sums up a lot about your time in prison. And I'll just read this quote out. And this is a prison guard saying this to you. "I watched you grow in here. There were times where I thought you would be shipped home in a body bag, especially after the beating you took. But you showed us all, not just strength and resilience, but you have such a kind heart. Take a look around you. You made a difference here. Not everyone does that. Be proud of leaving this place. You have no one to thank but yourself." I can't talk. You're going to have to talk. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah. It was the last thing I expected leaving. To, I guess, have one of the people, I guess, acknowledge that even being in those situations, that I tried. Constantly tried to be good and better and help, because that place is, it is hell. And there's not a day that I don't think about the people that are still there. I think that pretty much sums it up.
Yeah. It says a lot about the person that you've become, Cassie. And I know, look, at even coming back to Australia, you've had your challenges there, and the way that people look at you. And I think part of the book was, okay, this is who I am. There, it's all out there. You judge me for the person, but I invite anyone that's listened to this podcast not to, look at. You've been, you've exposed yourself, talking about your emotions, talking about the things that you've gone through. There was another benefit from your time over there. I might try and put a smile on your face here, but you did find love.
Yes.
At last.
Yes.
Okay. Talk us through that.
I so roughly about a year. So actually it was nearly a year on the dot. Just over a year. I after being out, I met Tato, and completely unexpected. Really unexpected. Right place, right time, because we were just coming out of certain parts of the pandemic. Well, not even the pandemic, restrictions being lifted.
Yeah.
But now it's really interesting when we have conversations, and he will say, especially where he worked, I still believe we were destined to meet each other. It sounds really like corny, because we were constantly in the same areas, on the same street, a few doors down from each other, because I gave English classes to a certain business on that area. So one day we were going to meet, and it just so happened that when we did meet, we were friends. And then eventually, I think after the first or second day, I sat him down and I told him everything, because I didn't want that burden of trying to explain how I've been here for so long and I've seen so little of Colombia, or, those sorts of things. And all he said to me was, can't judge you on your past, whether you did it, whether you didn't do it. I can't judge your past. All I can do is watch and see what you do with your present and future. And that was it. And we've had heaps of conversations about everything that I've gone through in prison. He too can't believe what I went through. Him being from that country, he has basically said that it's absolutely disgusting, and he goes, you should do something about it. I'm like, well, I can't really do anything about it from here. No, can I? Because obviously, as most people know, like, I did want to study law. I did want to go back and study law. I feel like I'd probably be quite a harsh lawyer sometimes.
You'd be ruthless.
Yeah, especially knowing the system.
You would retain the humanity. There's a balance to it. Like,
Yeah.
you can be ruthless, but with humanity. Yeah.
But yeah, so we got married in 2022 in March. If you've ever seen like one of those comedy movies about where anything and everything can go wrong for a wedding. That was me. Um, Very funny now to think about it. Even when I speak about it, it's hilarious. But obviously, at that point in time, it was not hilarious at all. Um, Still got married though. So got married and we arrived back in Australia in August 2022. And yeah, we've basically been constructing our life here. It's been tough. It's tough for me in general. But I think what makes it worse, because I do carry a lot of the weight and the burden of obviously having such a high profile for not a good thing. I'm constantly worried about the effect that has on my family, on my nephews, on my partner, because people can be really harsh in that aspect. Like, the problem is with me. It's not with them.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the reason why I constantly, actually, I think that's part of the reason why the book was so important to get it out there, because I don't want them to think that I'm hiding from what I did, or that it's okay to, I guess, not, I don't even know the right word to say. Like, I want them to see that it's okay to make a mistake, as I said, like, as long as you keep trying and you take responsibility for it. And that's something that I would rather be remembered for, somebody who screwed up, made the biggest mistake of her life, but she still moved forward, rather than, she did this type thing. Because everything that I have managed to overcome since coming back to Australia, it is a whole nother ball game to say there were many times that I could have just gone, this is too hard. I can't do this. Because it's not been easy. It's been a constant battle with Medicare, with my license, with banks, with absolutely everything. I do get harshly judged by people. Some people are really good. Some people can be really harsh, which obviously puts me back in a perspective when it does happen to me and someone treats me like absolute crap. I feel terrible, and it knocks me back for a good week or so. I will crawl back into my little safe retreat, and I go, this is why I'm not on social media. This is why I don't do anything. Because I'm so harsh on myself sometimes that I can't let myself go back to that point in my life. So little, it wasn't that long ago, where I hate myself, where I believe everything that people say about me. I refuse to go back there. And it's so easy to do it.
Yeah. Well, I can understand why it's a battle for you continuously. But what sort of society have we got if people that make mistakes? It's not a justice system. If you make a mistake, you pay the price for it, and you've got to be able to come out and live a good life. And that makes society a better place. What are we going to be a better society if we can just keep kicking you every time you stick your head up to keep you down? I see the inspiration that you can show people. Life can be at rock bottom, and you can't get much further than being stabbed in a Colombian prison. That's pretty bad. You can be at rock bottom and work your way up, and that should inspire people, and also show people that you can contribute to society. Who knows, like that message that the prison guard gave you as you're walking out the prison. I'm sure those sort of comments aren't handed out lightly. So you've made a difference in people's lives over there. So keep up the fight. Full credit to you. I've been fascinated by our chat, and really we've just scraped the surface of what you've experienced. But I've got to know you by sitting down and having a talk with you. Can I dare ask what's your plans, your future? You've got some things going on.
Yeah. So still very hands-on with teaching English. I do have some project type stuff behind the scenes. to do with, I guess, trying to help people that have been through similar situations, or not even similar situations, that have been through something
Yeah.
that has kind of made them pause in life and not know how to move forward. So I definitely do have a lot going on behind the scenes. I do tend to keep it very quiet until it's ready to go ahead. Um, Family wise, possibly in the next couple of maybe moving forward and having a family as well. I think we're just really still trying to focus on whether it's here or there.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
like that's because I don't I really, really love Colombia. I think it's a great country once you
Yeah.
get past the bad stuff. So I think we're behind the scenes. We're still trying to figure out if it's here or there, and I guess just moving forward with constantly wanting to help people. And I think that's a big part of why I decided that I wanted anything from the book to obviously go to charities that have vulnerable people, because you just never know what the most simple little bit of help, what it can do for someone.
Yeah.
And you'll probably find the people that need it most, they will never ask for it. They will suffer in silence until it's too late.
Well said, Cassie. Well said. Well, I think we'll wrap it up at this point, and I just want to thank you for coming on Eye Catch Killers, and really giving us an insight into what you've been through and get to understand how you survived and how you're steering your life in the right direction. And congratulations to you. You know, we talk about redemption here on Eye Catch Killers, resilience, human spirit. You've ticked all those boxes. I've got one favour to ask of you. Can you
Yep.
say in Spanish, thanks for having me on Eye Catch Killers?
Muchas gracias por tenerme en Eye Catch Killers.
Don't tell me I went soft on Cassie Sainsbury. I think it was about time people sat down and found out who this person is. We all make mistakes. She made a big one, but she paid a price. And I think she was very open and honest in the emotional toll that her time in prison and the type of person she's turned in now. That's what the justice system is meant to be all about. If people commit offences, they get punished. They pay a price. Cassie's done that, but I find inspiration in not only the way she survived, how she kept her humanity and what she's doing with her life now.